You're listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Hope you like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we are with singer-songwriter Coy Campbell, perhaps best known for his band Nightingale News, but really now performing a lot more solo. Welcome, Coy Campbell.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Nightingale News. Where did the name of Nightingale News come from?
Nightingale News came out of a sort of a play on words. When I was living in Athens, Georgia, several years ago, I would come to Savannah to visit family, and I got a couple of speeding tickets in Bloomingdale, and I wrote a song called Bloomingdale Blues. I kept rolling that name over in my head, and for some reason it became Nightingale News, and at that point I liked the phrase so much I just decided to keep it and went with it.
I'm going to get right into a song, because I love the way you set up images in the mind with your lyrics. For instance, the one that immediately jumps to mind is Fire's Arms.
Yeah.
And the image of two bar stools and an ashtray on the floor.
Yeah.
And the new dress and the pair of jeans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That image is just so evocative.
Two new blues and two weekends in a week, two guitars, one hotel room, two lovers losing sleep, two lane blacktop and two mornings before, two bar stools and an ashtray. They're on the pool room floor. One new dress, one new pair of jeans, one wife of a hooker, and one cold set of keys. You left a message back to me, and I'm afraid of listening, afraid for most of me. But living the old days, and not living the one tonight. I may not be able to walk on water, but I can wade about waist high. Just find a bed and lay awake in fire's arms, fire's arms, fire's arms. Just find a bed and got to this one, the only one I lead. I'm not saying goodnight because I have to. I may not be able to walk on water, but I can wade about waist high. Just find a bed and lay awake in fire's arms.
It's interesting, as every time I listen to it, different lines pop out. Like that time really popped out. I can't walk on water, but I can wade waist deep.
You know, I think that's a really great expression of just making best with what you can and being glad of it. I'm not perfect, but I'll get in there.
Yeah, and I'll do what I can.
I'll do the work. I'm not perfect, but it doesn't damn me.
I know this is a hard question, but where do these images come from?
Straight out of the life, truly. That was a song that was just flashed right through an experience that I had with a significant other in the past. This person and I had been able to spend about 2 weeks together. We'd been in a long-distance relationship, like kind of bi-coastal thing, and we got about a 2-week reprieve from our isolation, and we found a house in an isolated Florida beach. And we just rented it for a couple of weeks, and there on the last couple of nights, we just didn't want to sit there anymore, so we decided to go out and buy ourselves outfits and go out and not even stay at the house. We go out on the town and then get some hotel room on the A1A and just spend our last night together there because we're both songwriters. So this song is basically an image-to-image retelling of that night and that day and that moment in my life.
And Fire's Arms, where does that come from?
That song kind of came with the phrase, "Just burn the bed and lay awake in fire's arms," was of course the chorus. That sounded like a straight up hook to me the minute it came to me, so I wrote that down, and then I started listing literally the images that you hear in the song. And it didn't occur to me that there was this play on the term fire's arms and firearms. I was a little kind of taken aback at first that firearm and that would be kind of related to something that means something other than love. And this song is about love and loss and longing. I did appreciate the way the title inadvertently kind of took power away from the word firearms and gave it something else that actually talks about the better side of things.
I didn't catch that, actually, because I caught it as the heat of love.
Yeah, indeed.
And passion.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely that. It was the last night of two people getting to really see each other for a long time, and it's definitely seared in my mind. So they're a list and they're a poem, and they're not intended to be lyrics is the first thing with me. I'm gun shy about writing intentionally toward anything because you're inherently biased. So when things start coming at me, the only things I can really trust are just the images, the things I actually see in whatever vision I'm peering into, whatever world I'm looking into. I start calling them out, the objects, and so that song is literally a list for the first 2 verses of things I see around me.
Interesting. So they're written as poetry. So
yes, absolutely.
Written as poetry.
Yeah, I've never self-consciously tried to sit down and write a song in terms of that. I used to do that for both poetry and songwriting, and it didn't yield a lot that I was happy to sit with for a long time. And I'm really kind of enjoying and prefer to be in a place where I'm not sure what either one is, and I don't need to be preoccupied as an artist as to what it is. I need to be focused on grabbing whatever it is and getting it somewhere, and we'll talk about whatever else it is later, if at all. But my job is to be sure that it gets there and not be concerned which jar it ends up in thereafter.
So you start with the poetry.
Yes.
And then you put music to the poetry.
Typically that's what's going on. I don't feel that I am very much of a complicated songwriter at this point, and maybe my abilities lay better on other instruments than the guitar and the piano. So I just basically take what sounds good to me musically, figures that I enjoy while I'm playing solely alone with the guitar and practicing and stuff, and then what I feel is the only honest process towards making a genuine piece of authentic art that came out of the blue is to take these disassociated ideas, the poetry and the music, and then work them together in a way that yields a cogent product. We might call it a song, what it ends up being called, but if it was about me writing a Jim Dandy commercial type of song on demand, maybe I could do that. I don't think it would have much merit other than to sell people things. That's not really the business that I'm in.
Some of the songs, I'm sure that you've taken the poem and then reworked them into a lyric. This one is less that way because it sort of just tells the story.
Yeah.
But some of them are much more with a classic verse, chorus, verse, chorus.
Indeed.
And so when you do that, do you just add these choruses, pick a line that reverberates and just put that in the chorus?
Yeah, well, usually there's a pedal tone in things. Like, for instance, in the song Sideways and Sheets, there's that chorus. In the case of that, I really enjoyed the fact that it came as a lyric. I didn't try to make it that way. It came that way, and I let it, and it happens over 3 chords repeated over and over. And it was a real groundbreaking song for me as an earlier songwriter for me, because I was coming out of a world of compositions that were for big classical ensembles and jazz bands and things like that. And I played double bass in those scenarios, but I'd never been able to embrace the simplicity of song, and 3 chords at that point in my early career was just too much for me to be settled with. I mean, as a bassist, it wasn't all that fun, but when I got to put lyrics to it and put a guitar on it and then sing to it using my own voice and in command of my own words, it became a different bodily and intellectual adventure altogether. And in that, started to realize the very genius of people like Bob Dylan, and the way that sometimes the chorus and the verses are the same exact chords. In fact, Fire's Arms and Sideways and Sheets, they're the same chords repeated over and over and over. So the verses and the chorus don't change. And it took me most of a career to get to a point where that could be appreciated by myself as an artist. And so that was kind of a groundbreaking thing, to let things be simple and let me just be humble and appreciative of the fact that when you let things be simple, that the bigger things begin to reveal themselves, and that's kind of the magic of opening up to your potential. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, instead of write directly towards something that I want. This is as close to what I would have called a directly intended song, but it did come out of the blue, and it came from an experience also in Florida that year, in which I encountered a battered woman during the opening rounds of a hurricane. And this is where the song begins and goes, because at the end of the song we see what our protagonist accomplishes, and it sure enough would be classical murder ballad.
And getting back to why I love these songs, your songs, is I think because the poetry is at the root of the song. But then you have, in almost every song, there's a nice hook, musical hook that goes with it. And I think for those who are less lyric driven, the hooks themselves will catch people's interest.
Yeah.
But to me, it was sort of like, this is what it's saying. This is what it's saying. And then, that's sort of a nice hook that goes along with that. And then with, these are actually from the first album, Bell Rope. And then on top of that, with these sort of, and I'll use the word lush, orchestrations.
Indeed.
That, and I think you can see these songs each at any of those levels. To me, I build from lyric to music hook to the arrangement.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you could do it in an opposite direction.
I called to do
Or
it in different.
any combination.
I called to do it in a trio and a quartet, as a solo guy, in a big band like we just did. Finished recording the new single Nuevo Serape. Stay at Dollhouse Studios here in Savannah, Georgia, with Peter Maverick George's engineering and producing, obviously executive producer and kind of creative director on things. But I had to write the music. I had to come up with the lyrics. I had to wake up one morning and have a dreamy, strange time that led to a walk in a morning rain that produced a lyric that was enough for me to call, oddly enough, a poem, and to put to 2 simple chords, and then to bring a band in, and then to bring in horns, and to bring in strings, and arrange all of this has been so many different tasks, but other than just being a songwriter. Songs, I think, have to be built to start to sit in whatever, wherever they're put, they can do a thing. Do what they're put there to do. And I try to stick around to be original, of course, but also to employ as much from the tradition that it can grow from the tradition, and to be a part of the tradition, and to be a part of the songbook.
You're listening to Music Local and Sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. We are with singer-songwriter Coy Campbell. I admire and I enjoy the music and the orchestration, the arrangements, but again, I just come back to the lyric. I was sitting next to someone at the recent Trinity Thursday Night Opry.
I see.
You were part of the singer-songwriter.
I was performing that night.
Yeah,
Thanks for being there.
I was describing to the person I was sitting next to, who was not familiar with Nightingale News,
Okay.
but was really taken with your performance.
Excellent.
And I said, "Yeah, you have to check out Bell Rope." And I warned her, however, that the Nightingale News experience with some of the same songs is a very different experience. Because I think she was taken with the lyric.
Yes.
And honestly, you were one of her highlights for that.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, thank her for such a high regard. I appreciate that, and you're sharing it.
I said, if you see Nightingale News around, check it out. But
Thank you.
it's going to be very different. It's going to be a very different experience because I find Nightingale News, the band, as a more sonically enveloping experience.
Yeah, we like to get big.
Yeah, rather than a lyrical, poetic experience, which your solo work is. It's really more of a sonically enveloping experience.
I really love using my voice in that ensemble and hearing it, make chords with the other players. We're typically playing in rock clubs, and it's a bass, drums, guitar, two guitars kind of thing currently, and we can make some noise. This part of my life, I have never gotten to really perform at the level that I feel inside. I've always felt very restrained and back there on the bass, and I appreciate the job. Love it. Do it all day. I'll do it the rest of my life. But the voice in me is the voice of a poet, and that voice wants to sing and to play and to share words. And when that has been coming out with this ensemble, it's like I've never had a more pure musical experience of being in myself. It's unbelievable. I have to, it's like it brings emotion to my voice because I often have to choke back tears because when the songs are going and the sound is good and you're just moving, it's like you've never ever been doing anything as good with your body, all of it, ever before. You're just at the peak of what is great about being a human being and having the opportunity to be alive. And so that experience is profound to me, and that it takes place in front of a crowd is even more intense. So I know that allowing myself more opportunities to do that will produce fantastic results for me as a person, because it is such a positive thing for me to just get to even do.
I first caught you as a bass player in John Waite's band.
Great guy, man. What a player and a songwriter. Showman all the way.
And so I said, "Oh, this bass player. He's starting his own band. That's going to be interesting."
Right.
And then it was mind-blowing is such a cliche.
Right.
But it was a mind-blowing experience when I first heard Nightingale News.
Wow.
It was
that's very kind.
It was sonically so unlike anything else in town. And then the third part of the story was then hearing Bell Rope.
Right.
Starting to hear you more as a solo artist.
Yes.
And discovering you as a songwriter, as a poet. We just normally as humans classify things.
Sure.
And so my classification as you as a bass player was just simply blown out of the water.
Right.
Twice destroyed and twice reassembled.
That's
in different images.
I hate to think of myself as a restless person, but I think anyone could see that I am. And there's just so much out there to do while you're here. Fortunately, I've never been spoiled with success. And so I've always stayed on the side of always wanting and always yearning to be in that moment of, I guess it's just some sort of spiritual redemption when you just kind of move from where you began as a person to where you'll always be. And so whatever it takes to move through that process, to learn as much as you can and to employ those things, it's made me an incredibly wealthy, rich person as in terms of experiences that I've had. And so those changes, Dave, are just, shifts in appetite, but it's an overall hunger that will never, ever go away. And I hope I get to play the Paganini Caprices on the double bass when I'm 72 and retiring from the Savannah Philharmonic. That bass is still in my bedroom, and it's still right beside the nightstand and right beside the music stand where the bow sits, rosin.
And do you practice still?
Yes, I do. I keep my scales up on the string bass, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm playing bass right now for A.M. Rodriguez and his band, his damn fine band, as it were. So yeah, keeping my chops up locally. About one band other than Nightingale News is all I can commit to. I'd like to work more, but this is really who's in charge of me, and I like it. I prefer my life as a full-time songwriting band leader, album maker. It suits my skills, and it employs all the things that I really love to do. Most of which is just being on an awesome team of creative, driven, brilliant, just, kind people. That is where it's at, and I don't get that outside of the creative arts.
The songs come from experience, mostly.
Yeah. No, we didn't actually burn the bed and lay in it in that particular case. But that's the fun part of a song. I didn't have to in order to make it an imagistic reality, to cause it to have a corollary in actual life. I like that kind of work. It interests me.
Well, and that's the poetic license, too.
Yeah.
To enhance the vividness of the images.
Mm-hmm.
They're images that just last with you.
Yeah. I'd love to share them with you.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit and play Sideways in Sheets.
Okay.
That's the murder ballad. But it really shows a great sensitivity to this woman who's gone through, we don't know how long, the 10 months in the hole was specifically mentioned.
Yeah.
But we have the impression that it was much longer than that.
Yeah.
Before she was met in the bar. And
Correct.
does that come from a real life story?
Yes, it does. I don't know how long she had been with her abuser. I couldn't really say, but that was during a stint in Florida in which I was working, and that stint was exactly 10 months, so that was the frame of reference that I decided to apply to the situation. And yes, I did have to count the months on my fingers to make sure that the lyric was correct.
But again, the vividness of the storm outside, the rain coming down in just sheets, and the wind blowing it past, and as the lyric says, it sort of locks you in your bar stool because of it.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid to go out.
Yeah, that's truly what happened, and I wrote as faithfully to that. And that's one of the times when you fly through the storm of what's going to happen, and you get to literally describe what's happening, and it does actually come off as lyrically apt to what you're attempting to do. So that's fun. That's great when it works.
And from the understanding the lyric standpoint, she's gone from one storm, and now she's in another storm. A storm perhaps where she had no support, to now a storm where she has support. She seems to be in a more supportive environment here. Maybe only temporarily.
Well, yeah, I can't say that a bar room is always going to be a safe shelter, but in that case, that's where she chose, and for that time, no one abused her physically. And in that moment, my empathy was compelled such that I had to describe what was happening around me, and it was literally written on bar napkins. Not far from the 2 bar stools and an ashtray from Fire's Arms.
So this lyric literally was written on napkins.
Yeah, I still have them.
Again, it's filled with images. I see long hair. I see it dripping. It sort of matted down. Obviously been out in the rain, trying to get dry. But never seeming to get there.
Yeah. The whole play on wet and dry is right there too. You know, trying to get dry means different things in different rooms.
Context, yeah. The irony of the language drying out in a bar really, I think, sets this song apart. And really sort of amplifies the images.
Well, I think that conflict and contradiction and duality are definitely major drivers in the human psyche and drive all of our drama, all of our literature, all of our song, and we appreciate a good contradiction. That's for sure. And so we see a lot of that in this song. Fits that description.
Yeah.
still remember that march from December, 10 months way down in a hole. When she came out, she still wore his shadow, and the air was still just as cold. Locked in her house 'cause the rain wouldn't stop. Locked to a bar stool for weeks. She tried to get out, maybe dry out, but the rain came sideways in sheets. Sideways in sheets. Sideways in sheets. Oh, the rain came sideways in sheets. 'Cause tonight ain't forgive me, tonight ain't I'm sorry, and the rain's burning red down her cheek. And that face on the dial says just one more mile and he'll not get the better of me. She long felt peculiar, but the looks in the mirrors of the ghosts hanging over her sleeve. For 30 years there, they clung to thin air, too lonesome to ask her to leave. Ask her to leave, ask her to leave. Too lonesome to ask her to leave. She's a mother, tonight she's a daughter, and tonight she just sad history. She points her west, she gave it her best, she ain't going out on her knees. And he steps from the wheelhouse, with shirt off and steel out, it's the last thing he'll ever see. Sideways in sheets, sideways in sheets. Oh, the rain came sideways in
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
If you enjoy our programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP.
Healthy Savannah is a social movement founded in 2007 to make Savannah a healthier place to live. The organization works to increase opportunities for citizens to engage in physical activity and consume a nutritious, balanced diet. Healthy Savannah is fueled by the ambitions and motivations of volunteers. Events around the community are always in need of a helping hand, whether it is a one-time basis or continuously. More information available at healthysavannah.org. You're listening to Music Local and Sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we are with singer-songwriter Coy Campbell. I'll tell you, the people I know, and maybe I just know a select group, but the people I know in the music community here in Savannah are just wonderful.
Absolutely the best people in the world. I'd fall down the staircase trying to name all the names of people who have given me a leg up, given me a gig, given me a kind word, given me a parking spot, had me over to the radio show. It's been an incredibly welcoming experience in the 3 years that I've been back here. And, I came into Savannah kind of at full blast, coming into my powers as an artist, I guess, if that could be so completely presumptuous to say as much. But to have the songwriting and the music and the literary stuff all firing on all fours, and me coming here with several years of clear-headed thinking and sobriety, and coming into the town of my childhood and overlapping this phenomena of strength that was taking place and is continuing today. But to overlay that onto the landscape of my childhood has been a pyrotechnic amount of art for me. And I'm just trying to keep up with all of it. Really, I am. I've got a 26-poem series for all the squares here in Savannah that I cannot wait to finish. I really cannot wait to get that book of poems done. And it's just overflowing, and I do have to go out and make money to pay for these things. There's also that. People are taking care of me there and helping me make what I need to keep albums coming and keep the rent paid and, shoes on feet.
I'm now fascinated by this book of poetry with a poem for each square. How are you progressing on that?
Well, I'm about 14 in that I know are keepers, and I started it on January of 2013, and I've been a little late in keeping up with everything, but pretty much the challenge there, I set a few goals coming into town. One was to complete and release Bell Rope. I didn't know if I was going to be driving back to Athens, where we recorded that album, to do the second one. It turns out I'm doing it Dollhouse, and it's amazing. So I will be getting to do another record here. And I wanted to accomplish a series of poems, and I was restoring a house in which the artist had purchased 26 photographs and boxed them beautifully in these glass cases on her wall, one for each square. And that's where I drew the inspiration. And probably the next Sunday found myself in Wright Square on a warm January day, when, of all things, there was a trombone religious choir playing, and the azaleas were just obliquely in bloom at the time. It was a gorgeous day, and I wrote my first poem there, and that's when I decided I was going to go ahead and commit to that. And so I've been working on that. I've gotten some results with some that I like, some I'm going to go back to. It's kind of my sketchbook of love for the city of Savannah, so that no matter what, I can leave a good piece of my perspective on such a beautiful, inspiring place with that place after I'm gone. I take seriously the way that we regard ourselves as Savannans, and we have a long and beautiful literary tradition of this city, a very vaulted literary tradition, so that does not escape me. And to know that I have the opportunity to live on a bookshelf next to so many of the greats that have come and gone here, that's just too tantalizing a place to be for someone of my inclination. You set goals for that, and you go after it, and that's what I've been up to, and it's feeling very tangible.
I don't know if this is what you have in mind, but immediately jumping to mind is having you hook up with some of the very talented photographers in town, and do it as a coffee table book.
Right, I'm for it. I'm sure it'll be. I have no doubt that it will sell well for long after I'm gone. And I say that with all good humor and levity, towards my own mortality and vanity, as well as that of our city's noted fascinations with mortality and vanity. So in the best way, I would like to leave something that makes us feel good and about ourselves and reflects well upon our city and our history and our people.
An obsession with mortality and vanity. I don't think I've heard that expressed so well in terms of insight into Savannah. That's wonderful.
I take that most complimentary.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I love that. That's got to be in the preface of the book. If it's not part of one of the poems, it's got to be part of the preface of the book. We've somewhat referred to it as we've been talking, but I think to give everybody a better idea of who you are and what your evolution has been musically. Mm-hmm. So why don't we go through your musical journey to show everybody that evolution, and an evolution that's continuing. And, yeah.
Correct. I think that regionality has everything to do with who we are, and I was born in the American South in the early 70s and was surrounded by a Christian household, featured gospel music and country music and 70s radio rock. So that really informed my ear. Outlaw country, Willie Nelson. My parents are Texans. My grandparents are Georgians. There has been cross-forth between Savannah and the Gulf Coast since I was born. Families in East Texas and family here in coastal Georgia. So my life has been up and down I-10 across the Gulf Coast, all of it growing up. So that's the music in the region I came up in. I was actually born in Pensacola, Florida, at the Naval Air Station there. I'm the son of a Marine aviator. And from there, it was just appreciating music through the 80s and wanting to be in rock bands as a teenager, kind of getting my first guitar when I was 17 from my parents for Christmas. Thank you, parents. And not really doing much with it other than trying to learn Dust in the Wind and maybe Heart of Gold. That's about it. Out in New Mexico, when I was 17, I was working for the Boy Scouts of America. I encountered a bunch of misfit college students, cowboys, and I guess you'd say outlaw environmentalists, weirdos, good group of folks that worked on a scout ranch and played music, and they turned me on to a bunch of names I'd never heard before. One of them was Neil Young. I got my first Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young record, Deja Vu, and it blew my mind. So I went back to the Ben Franklin and bought the Rust Never Sleeps, a Neil Young album, Rust Never Sleeps, which has an acoustic side and a rock side, which is very much like my favorite Guns N' Roses albums, Patience. And I was hooked. I was hooked on great music. Came back to Georgia, bought Heart of Gold at the local music store in Statesboro, and listened to it over and over, and wanted to be a musician so bad I cried. I just wanted to be a musician so bad. So I got a bass and started playing in a garage band here in Georgia.
Electric bass?
Electric bass. Bought a Fender bass at Portman Music, working for Mock Plumbing for my uncle, tearing the insulation out of the gymnasium at Windsor Forest High School one summer. And that bought me 2 quarters at Georgia Southern and a Fender P bass. I got into Georgia Southern and got that bass and got my grades to the Dean's List, which allowed me to transfer to the University of New Mexico. And once in New Mexico, I started taking bass lessons from the University of New Mexico professor, Mark Tatum. My mentor outside of the classroom was the double bassist James Whiten, who went on to play for Tom Waits and a bunch of other people. A phenomenal musician and inspiration and brother to me. So between the two of them, they brought me up to speed, got me into the orchestra at the University of New Mexico, and I pursued a double degree in creative writing and double bass performance, which is what I left there with, and followed my hero, James, up to Seattle to play and get plugged into the jazz and kind of rock scene that was happening up there during the early aughts.
So you were classically trained in bass at the University of New Mexico.
That's right.
And you went back to the University of New Mexico because of your experience, your Boy Scout experience at that Boy Scout camp.
Yeah. My first band was a band naively called Chitlin Circuit, and basically it was a little bar band. It was me and a guitar player, and we just played blues covers and old Americana tunes.
And was that here?
This was in Albuquerque,
in Albuquerque
when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and that's when I first played my first gigs.
So in Albuquerque, did they ask you what a chitlin was?
They were just fascinated that I was from Georgia. They didn't know what a Southern person was, and I was just happy to be kind of like somewhere where I was unique again. So, yeah, playing upright bass in a bar called the Fat Chance on Central Avenue across from the University of New Mexico, and that led to a trio that toured up and down the Rockies for the next 2 or 3 years. And I got a lot of experience. I made my living doing that, and when that band broke up, I moved to Seattle after I finished college. So I kind of went from nowhere to being classically trained and playing in a working bluegrass Americana band really quick. But after all of that, I kind of had a bit of a run-in with life. I quit playing music for a minute, kind of had a nervous breakdown. I didn't want to play music, and I didn't. And when I got to Seattle, I put my bass away for 3 years and focused on writing. I wrote 3 collections of poems in the first 3 years there in Seattle. One was called 13, the other Black Antonyms, and The Last Jawbone of an Ass. They're still around, they're not in circulation, but I answered an ad in The Stranger there in Seattle to play bass in a rock band, and I immediately jumped on tour with a band called An American Starlet, and toured up and down the West Coast for the rest of my time there in Seattle. And while I was there, I was listening to KEXP, a band out of Athens, Georgia. It was coming up called the Drive-By Truckers, and this guy Patterson Hood was just telling me about the city of Athens and coming through my headphones really well. And I really missed the South, and things had gotten really dark for me there, and wasn't really playing music. So I resolved to call a friend back in Athens that I'd known from childhood and ask her if I could come visit and get a taste of the town and drive down and spend Christmas with my parents in Savannah. And she invited me down, and I decided when I got there, after meeting all the people and going to a few clubs and seeing some shows, that I was going to have to go. So I packed my stuff up from Seattle, and I moved to Athens, and I auditioned into the Athens Symphony in 2006. Played 7 seasons with them, played in numerous rock bands and kind of Americana units there, but it was really in Athens where I decided that I knew I was going to be a songwriter, and I started doing that and played my first gigs as a songwriter in those bars. It was about that time that due to deployments that my brother was having here in Savannah with the Army, and my family enduring the struggles of a working class military family, was kind of needed to be closer to Savannah and to be Hunter Army Airfield, and so I decided in 2013 that I was going to just come back here, and I was immediately picked up. I met Marcus Kuhlman, my drummer, week of the Savannah Music Fest in March of 2013. I was on the stage with him and John Waits within, I think, probably 4 weeks after that, and I've done nothing but work and write since I've been here. That's my journey. I've just kind of playing all over the country, moving from artist to artist, and really getting to see an amazingly unique spectrum of American music over the last 20 years. And for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful and happy to be here as a songwriter and a storyteller with an actual life to live and tell about.
So it sounds like much of that evolution began at the University of New Mexico.
That's correct.
And so we probably can thank them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark Tatum and Dr. Jorge Perez Gomez, our orchestra conductor, who kindly let me in when I wasn't quite qualified at the time. So without those opportunities, I just wouldn't be here today. And so for all of the educators out there listening, we thank you so much. And for the artists who pursue their dreams and inspire us, keep dreaming, keep working. We see you. We believe in you.
And the double major of creative writing and music.
Yeah.
Seems to be a really great combination for a songwriter.
Well, the funny thing was, it didn't occur to me until 10, 13 years later. I was deliberately playing music and writing in 2 different worlds, completely different worlds. And then one day in Seattle, I wrote a particularly terrible poem, but it looked just like a country lyric. And I was like, you made me think about that, because you got a lot of stuff you don't ever use that could actually do something. And I started to mess around, and for about 18 months produced just a bunch of forgettable stuff, like you do. But it got better. And then I kind of found my own process, which I just talked about earlier in the interview, kind of how I don't like to pursue lyrics directly. I need them to be out of the sky.
Where do you play around town?
I consider the Jinx in Savannah to be my home room, absolutely. Those guys are all experienced musicians and roadsters, and they feature both kinds of music, country and rock and roll. And there's a good songwriters happy hour over there. A.M. Rodriguez does a thing, I believe, every Friday. They do everything over there, and I really appreciate the space they make for the community to do all kinds of shows. I've seen cabarets and burlesque and drag shows there. I've seen heavy rock shows. I've seen straight ahead country shows there. Just a real broad programming and a great place to play. And I've been there with several bands over the years, both as a Savannah resident and as a visiting artist. So, really love Gil and Scott and Tony and the whole gang over there. That's my main spot. But I get around all over town. I like to play at El Rocco. I've played at the Sentient Bean, Clinton Edminster's new place, Space Station, attached to Starlandia, in the Starlandia district, up there on Bull Street, Bull and Victory, near the Popeyes. Love that spot. Love those folks. Where else is a good spot? Played out at Huckapoos. Another place I love to play out on Tybee is the Tybee Social Club. Is a real cool spot. Love the people over there. Curtis, their owner, and I have played some show together in the past. He was at the Trinity Opry the other night. Very talented guy, very good guy. That's my local thing. Getting out of town, it's basically going to be, right now in my career, I'm still playing the rooms that feature alcohol and occasionally a menu and big speakers, and that's about it. And that's where it should be. So out there, got my chops on the highways of America. There we go.
So when you think of a set that's really more rock and roll, like at the Jinx, versus the singer-songwriter environment, a small listening room, how do you change your sets to meet the environment?
It's going to come from instrumentation and song choice. So this kind of goes back to that Nightingale News versus Coy Campbell thing, where if Nightingale News was 4 guys, it was the same dudes working all the time, the same 4 individuals, that would be a thing. But according to different circumstances that I'm called to perform in, I select different people for different ensembles. And so yeah, I definitely address who and how the instrumentation is going to go. And what songs are to be played. If a barn dance is going down, we're not going to be playing any dirges, and we're not going to be playing through amplifiers. That's pretty much where we'll go. And I've had the very, 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 very good fortune to be able to move through in different ensembles and get to experience a lot of different environments that most of my professional peers haven't had a chance to. They're pretty much in the idiom that they're in, and that's super fantastic. And most of them are a lot better at that idiom than I am. As a generalist who can move through. So I find that in everything that I've just described, the variety of context and that keeps me moving as an artist. It gives me challenges, ways to seek new forms. I played acoustic in the atrium at the Jepson, and that was awesome, just playing in there. That was just as awesome as having a perfectly tight band in a really well-tuned room just going off in your earphones and having people there that are admiring it. A real rock show happens. That's a very magical thing, and whatever that magic thing is, I'm seeking it in whatever room. It's not the room, and it's not the people, and it's not the songs. It's all of those things happening at the same time that makes me an adept of this discipline, this art form. I just love it. It's the best feeling in the world when that magic happens.
So you're working on a new album.
Yes, I am.
And you've cut the first single.
Yeah, that's right.
It is out on social media.
Yes, it is. Well, you can actually find it on YouTube. It's a single by Coy Campbell entitled Nuevo Serape, and it is a very important song to me. It was written last spring when new love was in my veins, and I felt a sense of purpose and a place in the world. And, I kind of wrote the song and forgot about it as the political season became something that began to affect my mood and my thoughts and my being. And it was around the beginning of the Women's March this past January that I began to see a new hope in America, and I was incredibly heartened. I can't state that enough. I was incredibly heartened by the response in the Savannah community that both went to Washington in March and both here in the city that day. It was really a savor for me, and in that I began to find my place again. And I went back and I listened to the song Nuevo Serape, and it reminded me after this march of how I felt renewed and with a sense of purpose and ready to go into life on life's terms with whatever it had to offer, and accept that and be okay even though life is crazy. So I dedicate my work therefore to the women's marchers, and so we spent a great deal of time collating thousands of images of the march and putting them into a visual narrative. And we put that video out on YouTube. It's Coy Campbell and Nuevo Serape, and it features an all-star cast of Savannah players. Andrew Sovine is on it. Peter Mavrogeorgis produced it and played bass and guitar on it. Marcus Kuhlman plays drums. Jeff Zagers plays organ and tenor saxophone. We had an all-star trombonist come in to do the horn lines. It was just a stellar affair.
I set out in the darkness with the bucket, the quiet facing rain. As the capstans and the castles and the tree limbs brushing silent polished rain. So it's good night to your mornings. Go on safely, go on quiet, back to bed. You belong here in this garden where we all live, 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 where we all live. Past the capstan and the castles and the tree limbs brushing silent polished frame. So it's good night to your mornings. Go on safely, go on quiet, back to bed. You belong here in this garden where we all live, 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 where we all live.
And the players just sound fantastic.
Oh, it's bigger than anything I've ever done in terms of, I realize, in all of this too, that I'm not a country musician or a rock musician or a classical musician. I'm a soul musician. Nothing feels right unless it's coming from the soul. And this was definitely a case where I knew that we needed to bring in elements of soul for an anthem and a lullaby to these good people who stood up in a time of political crisis and made their voice heard.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the song.
Well, I was laying next to someone I love. It was an early spring morning, and I took the dog out for a walk. There was a gray mist coming down on the emerald green, and I felt completely inspired and in my place in this world. I found who I was and who I loved and what I wanted to do. And so I came home and I wrote with that mist on my face, and the lyric is, stepped out in the morning with a bucket in the quiet facing rain, which for some reason ended up reminding me of walking to the well for water. And then I just sort of name off past the cab stands and the castles and the tree limbs brushing silent, polished frame. Just naming things I saw. And then something that reminds me of a lullaby, this lyric. So it's good night to your morning, go on safely, go on quiet, back to bed. Something a mother would say to a child. Just like, you belong here, you belong here, you belong here in this place where we all live. Which is all of the lyrics of the entire song.
It has been wonderful to have Coy Campbell here in the studio. I've been looking forward to this for a long time because, as I mentioned, I've been through an evolution with Coy Campbell, and it's been a wonderful evolution. And I'm looking to see how this will continue. It's a journey I've just begun, and I'm looking how this journey will continue. And so excited about this journey.
Well, thank you so kindly. I feel that, and your support really means the world to me. Sometimes we artists, especially at my stage of the game, you don't know if anybody's hearing or you're really taking a look at what your work is, what your passion is, and of course you could never let that stop you from making. But when you do look out and there are faces that are listening and there are words of support and critical analysis, allyship, wow, it makes a lonesome journey a lot less lonesome. So thank you for your support. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to coming back and playing for you again.
Oh yes, we'll catch you later in this evolution.
I can't wait.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, that ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1.